Finishing chapter 23 with Flora here. Oop, there. As nervous as Flora felt around the dogs, she could only imagine what Sophia was feeling. But the cat bravely made her way to the blanket in the farthest corner. Then she nosed underneath the corner and disappeared. Flora carefully sat on the blanket Sophia had chosen for them and looked around. Oscar was on the nearest blanket, but except for raising his eyebrows, he did not move. None of the other dogs seemed to notice the newcomers. Nose down, Flora began to circle her blanket as she had seen the dogs do. "Lie down before you step on me," Sophia hissed. Flora settled down. No one barked. No one made an unfriendly comment. She'd even been accepted in the sledding team home, which had already smelled like dog, but was surprisingly warm. Chapter 24. The dogs still didn't seem to have the energy to do anything, but Flora scrambled up with the rising sun and an empty stomach. If yesterday's 3 bites of fish were any indication, they were very low on food. They would have to get it from somewhere else, and they would need sled pullers for the job. She wanted to be one of those pullers. But as she peered out from the doorway of the shelter, she realized she had not seen any sleds. They must not have made it off the ship. It made Flora sad to imagine the sturdy gliding machines on the floor of the sea, and it made her panic a little to think that even if there was a place to find food, there was no way to get there or bring anything back. And when would another ship be heading this way? Well, Flora wasn't going to let herself sink into gloom. She decided to get used to the cold. She wanted to be ready to work, just in case. What good was a puller with cold feet? But the moment she stepped outside, the cold became painful. It was the wind that cut the hardest. She nosed into it and felt her nostrils become crusty with frost. Her eyeballs stung. Her breath caught in her lungs, and she couldn't release it without effort. She wondered if her extra hair was doing anything to protect her. Flora turned back to the wind. "Don't be a baby," she told herself. She trotted out and began to make a wide circle in front of the 2 shelters. Her knees hurt. "Romp," she told herself. "Leap about and frisk." She tried to take a little leap and found that there was no lift in her legs. In fact, she couldn't feel them any longer. Behind her, she heard a shout and turned. It was Alaric. He looked twice as big as in his coat, which seemed to have 1 or 2 coats underneath, and he was waving something high in the air. Flora stumbled toward him as best she could, and he knelt down beside her. Pulling gloves off, he buttoned her into a dark red coat. He rolled up the sleeves so her front hooves showed. But when she tried to walk, the bottom of the coat dragged on the ground. She couldn't avoid stepping on it. Alaric shook his head. "It's too big." "Wait right here." He returned with a knife and a length of rope, then helped Flora out of the coat. After he cut the wide strip off the bottom, he buttoned her back into the coat and cinched it around her middle with the rope. She looked back and tried to see herself. She was sure she looked funny. She took a few steps and stopped. Her coat whispered with every move, but no part dragged on the ground, and she felt so cozy. Even her eyeballs felt warmer. When Sophia woke up, she made a surprised sound and walked around Flora slowly, then woke up Oscar to look. They sat together and stared. Oscar cleared his throat. "I wonder how you were going to make it out here. This answers one of my biggest questions." Sophia nodded. "I don't have to worry about my bed partner turning into a popsicle anymore, or a pigsicle." Flora stepped back out into the pale light. She began to run around the camp. She pushed hard until the cold air burned her throat. Then she ran even more. The lifelessness of the land still amazed her. There were no seals or polar bears or rabbits disappearing into their holes. No mice or birds, not even a single seagull. "I sure wouldn't mind if there was a little color out there," she said to one of the other dogs when she returned to the shelter. The dog's eyes twitched as if he were surprised to be spoken to, but he didn't respond. She tried again. "Even a spot of green poking up out of the snow would do my heart good." The dog gave a big sigh and turned his nose under his tail. Flora looked around the cave. "But one thing's for sure," she said in a louder voice. "A little run around the camp loosens your lungs and makes breathing easier." It was as if she weren't there. No one even turned to look to see who was talking. Even Oscar and Sophia were ignoring her, curled up along together sleeping. One morning, after Flora came back inside from a romp, she heard a dog telling the others that the men were having a meeting. Flora leaned over to Oscar. We should have a meeting too. Sophia moved to her side and Oscar came closer. Plans are afoot, he said. Flora's heart thrilled. She was pretty sure that any plans would involve pulling something, even if there were no sleds. Huff! Oscar suddenly lifted his head and crossed his eyes in an effort to look down his nose. A hair was stuck to one of his nostrils. He huffed again, and the hair took flight, fluttering down the blanket. Cat hair, he muttered. At least it doesn't smell like a dog, Sophia said. Flora coughed politely and sat down. You said there were plans afoot? What's happening to the expedition now? No dog sled, said Oscar. No expedition. Couldn't they send a replacement ship with a new sled? No ship, said Oscar. No replacement, no expedition. There is no new project now, and it is called staying alive as long as possible. We might be lucky and get rescued, or men might try to sail away in the lifeboats and save themselves. That's probably what they're meeting about. Sophia was quiet, but Flora knew she was listening. No matter what, it means the food has to last a long time. Flora nodded. The once-a-day fish feedings had gotten even smaller. Oscar went on. Actually, there is more food, out in the snow. Flora stopped herself from jumping up. She remembered Oscar talking about this, but it didn't seem important before. About 4 months ago, the captain brought a different crew and 2 dog teams, including me, to the Antarctic. We landed more than a mile from here. Each team pulled big boxes of food on sleds to two separate food stations out there. Oscar pointed his nose to the snowy wilderness. We did that so that on these final expeditions we wouldn't have to carry so much food with them. The first food station is at least 3 days from here. But we don't have a sled to bring back the supplies, Flora finished. Sophia's tail twitched. Let's not get too worried. We should know a lot more as soon as the men finish their meeting. Yup, Oscar muttered. I'm a little tired. Better take a nap. Outside there were shouts and the sound of work being done. Flora walked to the doorway and saw men moving about with a new sense of purpose. The extra lifeboat with the canned food had already loaded inside and been set down on its belly, as if it were about to sail in the snow. Ropes tied to it, blades stretched out, ready for pullers. Wow! She had to tell Oscar about this. The dogs were sniffing and talking to one another in low voices. Alaric was in a terrible mood as he helped carry cans. I didn't sign on to this crew to be a nursemaid, he complained out loud. No one was listening, but that didn't stop him. I don't know anything about taking care of a broken leg and busted ribs. Why do I have to stay in this nowhere place? Flora didn't have to go tell Oscar. He slipped by her and sidled up beside the boat, pacing and looking more excited than she had ever seen him in a long time. Oscar! She ran up to him. They're going to use the boat as a sled, aren't they? They're going to get food, right? Nope. Oscar didn't seem to be able to stop walking and sniffing. They decided to pull the boat to a place where they can safely put it in the water, sail off, and flag down a passing ship to rescue the captain and a few others who have to stay in camp. Poor bums. Flora wanted to do a crazy dance. Pulling! It was about to start. Big Amos had made sort of a table in front of the men's cabin out of wooden boxes. He was sharpening knives. When Flora walked by, he got very excited and dropped to his knees at the doorway. Come to me, my little sausage. Flora backed away hastily, but she wasn't fast enough. His hands ran around her coat, over the sides and legs. Oh, not so fat now. No worry. Still a nice pig. You come back, same place tomorrow. Tomorrow, she hoped, she'd be out doing her job, far away from him. I'm not thinking that that's a good place for Flora to be, but we'll find out.